Today I would like to talk about two things. The one thing, I would like to share you a very fresh, very new discussion paper done by McKinsey, the public Center for Development of McKinsey, where I was a very small, tiny collaborator of this report, which was done by four key personnel from Melbourne, London office, Dubai office. There were four major collaborators to that report. It's freshly baked. It's just new. You'd think it's June, and it's just being published a few weeks ago on the McKinsey website. Just go ahead and you can download it. It's quite interesting. So what we did, we tried to look at all these major trends affecting the speed and quality of public services, and it's called Delivering for Citizens, because all these technology and all these breakthrough advancements in private sector, they make public service look bad, because citizens always compare the nimble, fast, flexible, mobile apps and approaches and flexibility of private sector, and they expect public services to at least come to a certain level of comparison. And it's not happening. And there are also all these mega trends. I'm not going to spend too much time. You can download. It's very interesting discussion paper with some interesting results, some interesting analysis, in-depth analysis we tried to do. So profound demographic shifts, high levels of inequality, changing shape of cities to urban development, three kind of major trends affecting the quality and speed of public services. And there are 5 C's, there are 5, so to speak, organizational and managerial qualities or trends, not trends, characteristics that are quite interesting. They're universal. So about 80% of all the transformation, of all the projects in public sector that we've reviewed, they failed. 80%. And only 20% were actually, successful, or they at least achieved the result, the goal, the initial goal they pursued. And that leads to a lot of consequences. I mean, the trust, one of the major ones. So you could see that trust is eroding. The latest Edelman Trust Barometer shows that in 3/4 of countries, there is a complete or very deep distrust to public organizations and public services. So McKinsey was doing a comparison in the United States, so you could see grocery stores, a #1 institution, so to speak, or sphere or business where people trust. They trust grocery stores. So you go to your local Walmart and it says, stop the migration, and yeah, they're right. And you'd see that the state government services and federal government services are the least trusted sources of information. And it shows that the incapability, the lagging behind public services to private sector services is leading to a lot of problems. And trust is one of the major things that we've indicated. So 5 C's are committed leadership, the first one. It's quite universal. I mean, these 5 C's, they trust. They're cross-border, cross-platform. You would see them in the majority of the projects, public projects, this research reviewed. So committed leadership, 1, clear purpose and priorities, cadence and coordination in delivery. 3, compelling communication and capability for change. And I would like to focus today on this last 5th C, the capability for change. Because what is happening? Public institutions, and thanks to their nature and thanks to hierarchy and all the existing legacy we have not focusing. They're not focusing much on their capability of changing, of adapting, of evolving. So the major issue that this research was actually raising is that why government must transform, not reform. Because reforming is just doing things you've been doing all the time better, with better quality. But transforming is you have to completely reshape your vision. You have to completely reshape some of the approaches you have. And that was the issue that, has been on my mind as a researcher for many years. What are the major obstacles that undermine the capacity of public organizations to change, to evolve, to have different approaches? And apart from technology, apart from hardware, apart from all the management, organizational structures, the agile structures, whatever, one thing I really focus on, I'd like to share that results of that research with you today, is values. And a very specific thing is culture of mistake. And we've done some extensive research back in 2014 and 2015. I was the first collaborator of World Values Survey. You might have heard about this survey. It is done by a group of researchers, and the honorary president is Dr. Professor of University of Michigan, Dr. Ronald Inglehart. He's an American researcher. He's just, due to his age limits, he's quite old now. Now they have a council that runs this research, a very underestimated research. One great thing about this research, they've been trying to measure values and changes in values across cultures in 106 countries for the time being, starting from as early as 1981. So you have a huge database of information you can compare, you can analyze. So we took this methodology and run this in Kazakhstan in 2014 for the first time, for the 6th wave. And the 7th wave is starting this year. So it's quite interesting. I'll bypass that. So we have accumulated a lot of data on how values are structured in our country, in our society. I did some small focus for public sector as well. And what you can see, the Hofstede, the very famous Dutch researcher, he's taking the 6 coordinates, 6 values, so to speak, that define, that influence many, many things within given organization. Hofstede was a long time official for IBM, International Business Machines, and Royal Dutch Shell. So he's seen how this methodology can be used in corporate structures, in large corporate organizations. So he says he takes 6 coordinates, so to speak. So first is power distance. So degree of pecking order in organizations. Do you really need to approve every single step you make? Do you really need to get approvals? Do you really need to, how to put that, take yes or no from superiors? And authority, when we say power, it could be anyone. It could be your parents, the people you trust, your boss, anyone you think is more superior than you, anyone you think you should get approval from. And here we see that we have very huge power distance. In our society, especially in public sector, the general value, so to speak, the general stance, the general personal position is, yes, I'm better off approving every step I make. Which, I mean, a lot of you have seen that movie, hopefully, The Shawshank Redemption. And the Red, one of the main characters, played beautifully by Morgan Freeman. He's just, spent 20 years in prison. He gets out on a parole. He goes and gets a job at a grocery store. And every time he wants to go to the toilet, he approaches the manager and says, like, boss, I need to take a pee. And then he just puts him in the corner and says, look, every time you need to go to take a leak, don't ask me, just go. Right? Because, he's trained or he's accustomed that every single smaller decision or bigger decision, he has to get approval from someone superior. So in our case, it is the case. Majority of people in our society, and especially in public sector, they have this internal urge to get approval. Because, look, I'm better off having yes from superior and implementing a superior's command than putting it as his initiative, not like my personal initiative. It might be my personal initiative, but I'm better off going up and saying, boss, why don't you do that? Just, tell me do that. He says, yes, do that. Okay, I'm doing that. It's not my initiative. It's something that my boss told me. Individualism. Interestingly enough, our society historically was very collective. We had a very collective thinking and culture. But it's changing, and it's very individual nowadays. Masculinity, femininity, it has nothing to do with the gender. It's just the mode of behavior, basically. But the most interesting thing, and I don't want to spare much of your time, is this uncertainty avoidance. It's very interesting. Uncertainty avoidance. We want to avoid any uncertainty. It is directly connected to the culture of mistake I was mentioning in that famous joke. We avoid of making any mistakes because the price you pay for any mistake could be too high. And it's general trend in our culture that any mistake can be punishable to such an extent that it might be fatal. The price is too high. So you better avoid making any mistakes. And it's quite interesting to see the cultural implications of this trend. In many social roles that we play in our society, and especially in public sector, tend to be ideal. We want to be ideal bosses, ideal wives, ideal husbands, no mistakes, no brisk corners, no debates, no discussions, no objections, no criticisms. Criticisms might lead you to I have family, I have kids, right? I mean, criticisms will lead you to a very dangerous path. And that particular culture, avoidance of uncertainty avoidance, combined with high power distance, actually blocks changes. So using this methodology, we were able to see on a cultural level where are these blocking cultural values, so to speak, that block, that but how do I put that? That serve as brakes to certain innovations. And it has nothing to do with technology. You can have the best platform ever, you can have the best software, you can have the best hardware. It's about unblocking the mental, the cultural codes. And unfortunately, I mean, we've seen here a couple of results from that survey that we did. The presence of high power distance and low masculinity leads to non-compliance of rules and standards. It's quite interesting. At first, you might think that people in our society, they they comply with certain rules and standards. It's quite interesting. If you look at the source of rules and standards, there are formal ones. You have written permits, written restrictions, no smoking. And then you have personal ones that reinforced, a restriction or rule reinforced personally. You have a police officer coming in. So our people, with this general culture we have, are very okay with breaking the formal rules, formal procedures. No smoking, and he would go and smoke. What does it say? It says no smoking. No, geez. They put it in every corner. Where do we smoke? And then they see a police officer coming, and they, sorry, officer, I didn't mean to do that. I can't read English. It says no smoking. What the heck? How am I supposed to read that? And that's, that creates an interesting culture, especially if you take the public sector. There are a lot of rules and restrictions, and people are very reluctant to break them. They say, okay, let's just do it the normal way. Let's not worry about the formal side of procedures. And if there is a informal or personal reinforcement of that rule, there is a very strict boss, there are certain interests that you want to intervening with. That's the real kind of a thing that makes you comply with certain informal culture within that organization. The combination of individualism and low tolerance prevents self-organization. It's really difficult to organize ourselves. And a lot of my Kazakh fellows know that. Birthday parties, yeah? So you have WhatsApp groups, and you say, and then someone writes, oh, it's Galia's, it's Dinara's birthday tomorrow. Let's, give her some money to buy her a gift. And all hell breaks loose in that WhatsApp group. Who's collecting the money? Oh, it's Nurbek. Why Nurbek? Why he's always collecting money? How much do we pay? 10,000 tenges. Oh, why so much? Or for Dinari always, it's 10,000. For Ghalia last month it was 5,000. What's the whole, it's really difficult to organize ourselves. And that impedes in a real way when we look deeper. You take any public initiative, you take any new way of doing things, without actually changing that more intrinsic, more subtle things, culture and norms and codes and modes of behavior, a lot of things fail. A lot of these initiatives and reforms fail because you can do same things with new instruments, but the real problem is not doing same things with new instruments, is just transforming itself, transforming the way we do it, complying with rules and procedures, unblocking the changes, self-organizing ourselves. And in that sense, if you look deeper to the problem, the public sector has to compete with more nimble, mobile, and flexible private sector, which is more efficient now. And citizens can't compare. They expect same level of flexibility, they expect same level of mobility from public sector nowadays. And they won't tolerate anymore. They say, why should I wait? Oh, we're reforming, you just wait for a couple more years, we're switching to this new platform. I don't want to wait. Why? Private company can do it in weeks and months and days, or constantly upgrading the platforms or any level of services, and can't you? Given the resources you have as a government. In 2016, and it's a great argument, in 2016, the government expenditures accounted for 33% of global GDP, 33%. 1/3 of all the expenditures. So you have the resources, you have the power, you have the authority. Why can't you change the way you do things? I want them to be more comfortable, flexible, quick, mobile, adapt to my concrete needs, to my daily needs. So that's one of the basic issues we have right now. I'm gonna stop here. If somebody's interested in this type of research, I'll be happy and delighted to share all the results and methodology. And World Values Survey is quite underestimated. I mean, you could check their websites, and they do a lot of, one great thing about it, you have a lot of data accumulated, huge databases, cross-country, 106 countries, 1981, 30 years of experience in data and analysis. And it might help you to look at certain things from different angles. Because we talk a lot about disruptive technologies, we talk about AI, artificial intelligence, and technology affecting everything. But one thing that remains that we don't focus on is, are we up to the job as persons? As public servants. We could use these advanced tools, but are we really able and willing to transform ourselves as persons, individually, on a cultural level? You now have these geeks, these young teenagers, and one great example would be journalism. The journalism, thanks to mobile technologies, is now, the traditional journalism is experiencing huge stress. I was attending one of the conferences 2 weeks ago at the Eurasian Media Forum, and these traditional journalists were like, wow, this kid with a camera is now the best journalist ever. He would go to places where traditional journalists would never go. He would shoot things we never shoot. And scaring part of it, his subjective opinion, his limited knowledge is projected to millions and millions of people. And talk about journalism ethics. But the way we're doing this, we have to learn from these teenagers, because that's what's happening, basically. So the issue that remains that I'd like to kind of propose is that the spirit of bureaucracy, the spirit of public administration, the value sets, the framework, value framework of public administration, given that huge changes in technology, given the huge changes in many spheres of our life, do they remain as they are, traditional, excellence, serving people, protect and serve, or they have to transform? Thank you very much for your attention.